So I had a server nightmare last night. It was a new one. I'd never had one like this before. I'm just going to start off by setting the scene for you. We're in a restaurant that I've never worked in before. It looked like I think it looked like a Cracker Barrel based on the one time I was in a Cracker Barrel when I went to Ohio for a wedding, I don't know, 25 years ago. So I have this deep core memory of what a Cracker Barrel might maybe look like. And I think it was that, except instead of a main central dining area, there was just a swimming pool, like the kind that doesn't get very deep, like in a hotel. And the glass washer wasn't a real glass washer, it was just like the carousel part of a dolphin glass washer. It was in the shallow end of the swimming pool where those swimming pools that just gradually get deeper as you walk in. So it starts off super shallow, but it's on an incline. So the carousel is on an angle on this incline in the shallow end of the swimming pool, and we're putting glassware on it and it's spinning around. But because it's on an angle, the glasses all keep falling over and rolling away into the deep end of the swimming pool. And I kept having to go into the deeper end of the swimming pool in my work clothes to get all the glassware, specifically wine glasses. I don't know why it was wine glasses that had rolled away. It just made no sense. And in my nightmare, of course, I'm just like, this is fine. This is totally normal, right?
They're always frustrating.
So I went to work and I told my KM about it, and he stopped what he was doing and he looked at me and he just blinks at me and he goes, "How high did you get before bed?" Welcome to Server Nightmares, a comedy podcast by restaurant people for restaurant people. There's a lot of talk about all the shit that happens in restaurants, but one thing normies really don't seem to understand is the nightmares, and I mean like literal nightmares. We all have the most ridiculous nightmares you've ever heard of, and on this podcast, we're here to talk about them. I'm a professional restaurant person, and these are my nightmares. Welcome to the first episode of Server Nightmares podcast. This is my brainchild that I had one day just like yapping after work. I was like, all we do is we sit here and we tell the same stories over and over and over again about our nightmares, both literal and like just like nightmare shifts that you've had where you wish it was a nightmare, but it actually happened. And like, I feel like we could make this into a podcast where restaurant people just talk about like the worst day of their life and the worst nightmares they've ever had. I don't know what it is about serving that creates such unhinged nightmares so consistently as well. Like, I just want to clarify something for anybody who's curious, but especially people who may have stumbled onto this podcast who have never worked in restaurants before and have no idea what I'm talking about. Like, people have work nightmares. It's fine. You have nightmares about your job, this and that. Serving nightmares are on a different level. Like, something that you're gonna understand about me is I do end up on tangents a lot, but I promise I have a point. I promise. I'm like Reese Witherspoon in Legally Blonde, right? I have a point. I promise. I will come back to it, but I'm going to start off just talking about my work history a little bit. I've worked in restaurants we're coming up on like 14 years now. Yeah, Jesus, I'm getting old. All right. But before that, my first real job in the summer between high school and university, I worked in an emergency department. And the semester before that, my last semester of high school, I was doing a full semester co-op in chronic care nursing. And there was a bit of overlap. So I was doing like for a teenager before I worked in restaurants, what I thought were insane hours. And they were insane hours, not as like insane as restaurant stuff, but it was a lot. And like I was working in chronic care nursing, I was working in palliative care, and then I was working in an emergency department. And in that whole time, I had one nightmare. And it was in that overlap time where I was doing both jobs and pulling long hours. I had one nightmare, and it was about the printer. I had a nightmare that the power was off in the emergency department, but the printer that was printing people's charts when they were coming in to be triaged was still going, but all the lights were off and it was dark, and I was like trying to find the printer to get the charts, and I was literally in like wandering around my bedroom half awake in the dark trying to find the printer. And that's my one emergency room nightmare. I have had server nightmares 3 to 5 times a week for the last however long it's been that I've been serving, 12 and a half years. And even like I mentioned earlier, I've been in restaurants for almost coming up on 14 years, but I haven't been serving for that whole time. There's a lot of overlap between the different jobs, but I worked in fast food. I was at Wendy's for a while. I was also a host, and I was also a full-time expo. And I barely ever had nightmares about any of that. I think I had one or two Wendy's nightmares where like the doors wouldn't lock and people just kept coming in, which is also a common server nightmare, something we have all the time. But it's nothing on the scale like the server nightmares. I also, since starting serving, I've also been a bartender. I've also been a shift supervisor, management. And yeah, I have the occasional bar nightmare. I used to have them a lot more when I used to close bar all the time, but they were never that insane. It was always making like a lot of the same cocktail over and over and over again. And then I'd wake up and be like, oh no, I'm not at work, get over it. I don't think I've ever had a management nightmare. Maybe the management ones are stuff that belongs in nightmares that actually happened. I don't know. Maybe that's probably for another day. Maybe we'll have a special episode dedicated right to management horror stories. And most of the time, serving nightmares are just like you're in the weeds really bad. But every now and then, and by every now and then, I mean like 1 in 3 probably, so like once a week, it's just an unhinged, nonsensical nightmare. And that's what this podcast is going to be about, is us talking about our stupid nightmares, like my one about the glass washer at the beginning of the podcast. It makes no sense. It's pulling from, I guess, deep core memories from my childhood. I have no idea. But they don't make any sense, or like it's like when you have that nightmare where you're like trying to run but you just can't. You're running but you're still moving in slow motion. It's like that. You're doing your job, but it's like you're going in slow motion. Everything takes way longer than it should, and you're just in ridiculous places. And like from what I can tell, this is universal. All servers seem to have these. At least everybody I've talked to seems to have these, to the point that my husband, you heard from him very briefly at the beginning of the podcast, Mr. Server Nightmares. He worked in restaurants for, oh boy, I'm going to have him on very shortly, but he worked in restaurants for a very long time. I want to say probably about 18 years. He stopped working in restaurants a couple years ago, but he still gets the nightmares. And I was watching it was like a reel or a TikTok or something. I will link to it in the down below if I can find it. But it's this guy talking about what server nightmares are like. He's got like a dream filter on, and I'm watching this reel with sound on, and my husband is sitting across the room, and you just hear the restaurant's really busy, so you're gonna have to take a section in the basement. And he goes, "Is this about server nightmares?" He just knew, and it is very nice to be married to somebody who understands, and we can talk about our server nightmares together openly and honestly, and we completely understand and can empathize with each other. So that conversation with him is going to be coming up next. But first, before we get into my conversation with Mr. Server Nightmares, I am going to leave a little spot here with a little podcast jingle in case one day, somehow, some way, we do end up having monetization on these and we have ads. So we'll be back with Mr. Server Nightmares after this brief break, or maybe pretty much immediately. I don't know. I guess we'll wait and see. Okay, so welcome, people of the pod. We have Mr. Server Nightmares over here. Mr. Server Nightmares, why don't you tell the lovely people of the pod a little bit about your resume? Run down your resume for us.
I worked in restaurants for, I think it was about 13 years. I was a server, I was a sort of a manager, and I was a bartender as well. So long, long time.
It's got to be more than 13 years, doesn't it?
I think it was 13 years. I'm pretty sure it was before I got my other job.
Okay.
Yeah, because I don't work in the industry anymore. So just putting that out there. I got out. It can happen. You can get out if you want to. You don't want to, though.
If you don't want to, that's perfectly fine. You can be like me and just be forever and ever.
Yeah, some people, it's for them. Some people, it's not necessarily, right? So for me, I just kind of was compelled away from the industry after a while, just driving me nuts. But I mean, like maybe that's kind of any job, though, you know.
Anyway, speaking of driving you nuts, what is your like worst server nightmare? Did you have like a recurring server nightmare that you wanted to talk
Oh
about?
yeah, it's always the same. It's always, you're running around in a place that you're unfamiliar with, right? You're getting a ton of tables. They're all in random places. There's ridiculousness going on. I had a server nightmare once where I was at a SeaWorld, and that always happens to me. It's always like, oh, I'm visiting this place, and then like my work invades my night, like my dreams, which is awful. That's what server nightmares tend to be, right? It's just for me, anyways. So that I had a dream where I was at SeaWorld, and I remember the bartender that I was working with at the time, who's this bald man. He was wearing like a dolphin suit, and he was making these like stupid SeaWorld cocktails. And I just remember being like so frustrated, being like, I'm just visiting SeaWorld. Please go away. I don't want to work. But of course, my server nightmares, I just get thrust into it, and then I end up having to work. So that was a very strange one. And for some reason in that server nightmare, they only served pancakes, and there was like these giant piles of pancakes that we were serving, and it was just that's just like it always starts like that for me. It's always you're doing something unrelated to your job, and then your job invades your dream. It's almost like a parasite. It's kind of creepy when you think of it that way, though. That was one server dream that sticks out. I had another server dream that always sticks out where, and this was before Donald Trump was elected president, like years and years ago. I had a dream he gifted me a mansion, and it was this giant mansion. And same thing. The restaurant decides it's going to move its business into my mansion, and I'm freaking out, saying like, "This is mine. You need to leave." Like, but they're like, no, 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 no. We just sat you in the garage. Like we set up a four top there, so you're gonna need to go into the garage. What's frustrating about that dream is I didn't even know the layout of the mansion, so I'm lost trying to find the kitchen, trying to find the bar. For some reason, I always protest in these dreams, but they're like, well, what's wrong? Why are you freaking out? Sort of thing, right? Like the usual gaslighting
Uh-huh.
you get in the industry, which is, and we've all had
What
that,
do
which
you
is,
mean you can't stay and do a double on Sunday?
yeah,
What do you mean?
and
Why
they're just like,
not?
well, we have no one else, sort of thing, right? They gaslight you, and they just make you feel like, if you don't help them, you're just, it's terrible. And that always translated to my server nightmares, I always found.
So, something I just wanted you to touch on for a second, since you have been out of the industry, and since you also had like significant other jobs that were not serving or not managing or whatever, not restaurant related, can you compare and contrast the work nightmares?
Yeah, so I mean, like, if I can't even remember other jobs where I had like a nightmare about it. If I did, they were just kind of like a well kind of job, I worked some retail before, restaurants, and the job I work now is none of that. But like if I were to have a dream about it, it's just kind of like, oh, it's just like, a little bit of work incorporated in my dream, as opposed to like server nightmares where they're so anxiety inducing, I want to say. Like, there's always a bad time whenever you're having a server nightmare. I've never had a server nightmare that was a good one, or a restaurant nightmare that was a good one. It was always just super stressful. Me protesting, being like, I'm not working today, right? And then the restaurant being like gaslighting me. That's pretty much it. But other dreams, other workplaces, none. I have none that stick
It's
out.
just not on the same scale. It's just
No,
no, because now
definitely.
you have a desk job,
Yes, I do.
and you've had what, like one nightmare about that, and it wasn't even that
No,
bad.
well, the one nightmare I did have about it, it was a server nightmare. So it was like that job, and I was like doing my other job or whatever, and it turned into like a server nightmare. I ended up having to bartend for some weird reason, and then the same sort of feelings come back, which is like that anxiety sort of things that we all kind of have. I think like a lot of the time, and it especially happens to people that work a lot of nights, is like you just go home, you can't relax, right? You're just like, oh, what a crazy day. I got to work tomorrow morning, because like it's always just shift work, right? And so you just can't unwind after bed. So you end up going to sleep, and you end up having these crazy server nightmares.
So, the next segment that I would like to move on to would be like your actual nightmares that actually happened. What was like the worst nightmare shift you've ever had in a restaurant?
The worst nightmare shifts? I mean, like, I remember one where I was managing and I was serving, and there was no other managers. and we had some like a couple people call in from what I recall, and it was super super busy and like just 40-minute chit times, everyone's pissed off. I remember like me being overwhelmed as a server and then people's tables getting mad, then asking like, oh, they want to speak to a manager. Of course there's no manager there. So I just remember being like, okay, well, like, I remember one of the ladies came up to me when I was trying to ring in like a 16 or something like that. And she's just giving me an earful, being like, this is unacceptable, da da da. And I just remember being like, you know what? I just don't give a fuck right now. I just can't, it's just so overwhelming. And it's just, that's one that sticks out. I mean, like other ones, you get like walk ins of however many, like hundreds of people, stuff like that. Or like just super busy days. The worst is like the end of the week in the restaurant that I worked at, right? So Sunday, they didn't have anything. We also used to call it 86 Sundays because they'd run out of everything. So you'd have these busy Sundays with all like the crazy church people coming in. And then they'd be like, oh, well, I want, like salmon or something like that. And then it'd be like, oh, we're out of salmon. And they'd be like, oh, okay, well, I'll just get this then. And it's like, oh, we're actually out of that as well. And
Let
people
me
are
tell you
just
what we
like,
do have. How about that? That's probably
yeah, and it's
easier.
just, well, it was also a time where like they try and save money on like their costs of goods and labor and stuff. And so because like they'd always incentivize managers with bonuses, right? They want to hit those bonuses. So what they would do is they just wouldn't order things that we needed, or they'd just try and save as much money in the budget as they can, which really was a detriment to the restaurant. And it's just, and then it's just the same thing. Like they gaslight you, being like, "Oh, it's on the budget." It's like, no, you just want your bonus. So stuff like that. I mean, we've all had crazy shifts, so. But that one specifically, that woman talking to me while I was ringing in a 16 and me just not giving any more fucks, that specifically stands out for me.
I think one of the ones, because I obviously, if I'm going to be doing this podcast, I'm going to have to pace myself on my stories. Um, it was probably like about this time last year. It was around like Christmas shopping time last year. And I was on bar on Saturday morning, and there was me and another bartender, but they were super short staffed on servers. I think we only had like three servers. And the restaurant I'm in right now, we get like sports teams all the time, kids' sports teams. And I think there was only like three servers on, and one of them was like, bless, she's great. I love her, but brand new at the time, brand new baby server. And she had like a party of 40 or something all by herself. She'd never done a hockey party before, and she was fucking it up so bad. And so she couldn't take any other tables besides that. So me and the other bartender ended up with I don't even know what it is. It's probably like a 30 table section or so. And then, so we had our own section, which was already like a 20 some table section. And then we had to take the rest of her section. And then she had the party. And then there was nowhere else to go because there was another party in the dining room. So there's nowhere else to go except for the bar's massive section. And we just got completely laced. And just the entire thing all at once. We're running. Her hockey party is yelling at the bartenders, yelling at us for their bills, and she's trying her best to sort them, but she's like on Expo crying, trying to get these bills sorted. And her party's just yelling at us for the bills. I'm like, my dude, there's nothing I can do for you. Like, I'm the bartender. I have literally nothing to do with this. I'm in a completely different area. And they just kept going, kept yelling at us, and they wouldn't stop. And then all of our tables were pissed because it was like, just completely hard stuck in the weeds, 10 minutes for water kind of deal. And that's probably like the most in the weeds I've ever been. And definitely like the worst shift I've had where I wasn't like a brand new baby server. And the problem wasn't that I didn't know what I was doing. The problem was just like we needed to go on a wait list and we did not.
Yeah,
Because,
they
we
just,
need to get as much business as possible, even if we're horrendously understaffed. And the kitchen is just like, plus 15 red screen kitchen nightmares.
yeah, they just want, that's just the management style all restaurants have. Like, oh, we need to make as much money as possible, right? And so they don't pace things, they don't, stagger tables at all, they just sit them all, and we're just gonna like work as hard as we can, to the detriment of the guest experience. I feel like that's just a lot of corporate culture, and corporate culture's really done a lot for restaurants, but it's also ruined the industry at the same time. Like it's just
Yeah, like
not.
bending over backwards for
Yeah, it's
people.
bending over backwards, but like a lot of the philosophy that makes really unique restaurants great corporate culture just really throws it out the window. Some of the best restaurants I had never ran like that. Or, sorry, best restaurants I've been to, rather, have never run like that. Run ragged sort of thing, you know. But, you know, that's just corporate culture. Yeah, corporate culture's ruined everything. And restaurants, you know, it's one of those things. I mean, it's not that it's really, really, you know, I think at a point in time it was amazing for, you know, the industry. Efficiencies, you know, cost saving measures. There's a lot of innovations that came out of corporate culture, but it just rots eventually. Like it rots the business model to the core, and then you just end up with all these crazy problems, you know, and then stressed out workers. That's just how it goes.
Is there anything else you would like to share about your server nightmares, real or actual nightmare?
Like real or they all, there's just so many times I've had them. I still have them. I haven't worked in restaurants for how long has it been now? A year, 2 years?
I think you've been done for over 2
Like
years.
over two years. I
You
still
did
have them
desk
every
job
once in a while.
and restaurant for what, like a year and a half?
Yeah, like you know, my other job's stressful, but it's nothing like it. I think a lot of people don't appreciate how crazy it makes you. I don't know.
I don't know. I think the thing with serving that, like, I think what it is that makes people crazy is that people, like a lot of customers, not, I shouldn't say a lot, most people are great, but you know, the people who just suck and make it suck. They treat the restaurant experience like the most important thing in the world. Like they
Yeah,
treat you
that's
like you're ruining their life, like you are a doctor
and
and you're
that's
not being
corporate
able to save
culture,
their life
right?
when their fries are cold. And that's why you're stressed out because like nothing you're doing in restaurant is important. Like the world's not going to end if it takes me like an extra 2 minutes to go get this glass of Chardonnay for Mabel, you know? But she acts like it's the end of the world.
Yeah, because corporate culture turned her into that. Like just through years of pandering, you end up with people like that. And you know, so but
So you're super stressed for things that you know are menial and don't really matter. And I
yeah.
think that might be what makes it so incredibly stressful.
Yeah. And then it also kind of feels demeaning a bit too. But I mean like that's kind of our
I
job,
mean,
right?
I find that's getting better. Maybe it's just because like the restaurant I'm at now is in like a better area of town than the one I was in before, but I very rarely have people that are just absolute dicks.
Okay. Yeah, those are the worst. Oh, like the drunken cowboy guy. That was like
Drunken
this fat dude
cowboy.
comes in, I'm bartending, and he's got like a cowboy hat on, his guts hanging out, and he's yelling down the bar, and it's super busy, and and he's just belligerent, kind of drooling a little bit, like, "Hey, buddy, fucking buddy," you know, and it just like that was the moment where I'm just like, I can't, I hate this. I just can't do it anymore. And it wasn't like a negative reflection on myself. Like, it's not that I'm like, I'm better than this at all. Not at all. It's just that, you know, it was just really getting to me, like stuff like that. And then just, you know, I'd be always able to brush it off. But then after a while, I'm just like, I just can't deal with that nonsense anymore. Kudos to everyone who can. Everyone, you know, some of the hardest working people are in the restaurant industry. You know, the really hard workers, like they keep those places going. There are some lazy people. We all know that. We all have lazy people, right, that we work with that don't do the best job, but you know they still need to make a paycheck. But
Oh man, I just realized I think I had a dream about somebody I used to work with last night just when you said lazy people.
yeah,
I
there you go.
realized I
See,
think I had a dream about a past coworker.
yeah, some people call that out and be like, "Oh, there's tons of lazy people." Yes, there is, but the hard workers are like some of the hardest workers in any industry, I think.
Well, on that note, thank you very much, Mr. Server Nightmares, for potting with me this morning. I greatly
You're very
appreciate
welcome.
it.
Thank you for having me. I wish you all success in your endeavors and may you make tons and tons of tips.
And that brings us to the end of our very first episode of the Server Nightmares podcast. Thank you so much if you've made it this far. Like I said, it is the very first podcast episode I have ever made, and I don't super duper know what I'm doing, and I feel like I rambled a lot. So I really appreciate all of you for hanging in there with me. It's only up from here. If you have server nightmares, or really like restaurant nightmares in general, I'd love to hear all different perspectives. You can email me at servernightmarespod@gmail.com, and we will try and get you on the podcast, whether I'm telling your story or you telling your story, or I don't know. We'll have to figure it out as we go. Thank you again so much for listening. Until next time, sweet dreams. This podcast is made by me, Mrs. Server Nightmares, on my 2012 MacBook Pro with outdated GarageBand because I don't know what I'm doing and I refuse to invest money in something that I don't know if I like yet or not. I guess I'm the producer, I'm the scriptwriter, I'm the supervisor, I am all the things. The Server Nightmares theme song and the song you're hearing right now are free music on GarageBand, in case you're curious. This podcast is not produced in association with any person, place, group, or thing. I don't know, what else do people say at the end of podcasts to make them sound important and official?